What's up, guys? Before we jump in, if you aren't already listening to the Will Mosley podcast, you definitely should be. It is literally the best way to enjoy my content. You can go on, your commute to work, in the bath, in the shower, anywhere, whatever you're doing. You literally can press play on your podcast, and just have me rolling with you. So wherever Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the places you can consume a podcast, Will Mosley Podcast. All right, let's jump in now.
So satisfying. It's just like, ooh, like that. Do-do-do-do. Almost like when you hear like a Facebook message. Used to be like a satisfying sound. Now it's just like whatever. It says it's still waiting. The sending. Oh, cool. Sending. Yep. Probably about 5 seconds to go on that send. And then this should be good. There she goes. William is sharing, receiving. Let's pop. There it is. A little vibrate, that little do. If you guys aren't using AirDrop, you got to. AirDrop's dope. Okay, so this should be my downloads now. Group by date created. Okay. I just called it O because I didn't feel I was just making a test. And instead of calling it test, it was like, oh, something. I was like, oh, something that would make sense for my own brain. All right, so what we're gonna do is just kind of watch this. It's maybe 2 minutes long, and then I'll explain kind of what's going on in it as after we watch it. All right, and it doesn't really have much sound in it in either way it goes, so you're not missing out on anything if you can't hear the sound. It's just visually showing like what the hell, how to use 4K crop on Canon and how it can pretty much elevate your films. I'm actually going to be using 4K crop moving forward. So this first couple of scenes are just me trying to figure out like, oh, how can I maybe use this? And then the rest of it's like, oh, this is how I exploit it. All right, here we go. Like I said, there's not really much any volume, or else there's a little bit of volume at the very end, but not much. Okay, so I can actually crop into a thing that's basic stuff, nothing crazy. And me walking from the sink. And this one takes forever. And now this is where we start getting into some interesting stuff. You notice it's like zooming in, panning in into where the focus actually is. And then I'm heading out. And same here. Notice how I don't have to all the way be in the frame, but it's going to exactly where it needs to be. Like right at that moment. I asked Laura, I was like, hey Laura, it's like, check this out. What do you think of this? And she's like, it looks like a movie. And I was like, oh, that's probably the best, like, it's the best compliment you could actually give me. Thank you. And she's like, oh, don't get all sappy with me. Don't get all sappy with me. And this is just me figuring it out and experimenting. And I personally feel like this turned out really well. The quality in my mind feels really good. I'm just chilling. You know, each shot is actually pretty long. And of course, if I could go back, I'd probably like change a couple of these push-ins instead of make a couple of them static, a couple of them push-ins, kind of alternate. But I'll end up going back in the timeline and kind of explaining what's happening as we go. But just like chilling, you know what I mean? Like this is what I want. This is probably one of the best shots. It's like very powerful. We're looking at like leaves, kind of like as if you're on the podcast, leaves and all this stuff, just kind of like looking so good. This is when you got a little bit of audio. When I change my audio settings. I'm walking back into the house. And if you're on the podcast, I definitely recommend watching this stream because this is more of a visual pulling out. And then another one just like pushing in. All right, so what I'm gonna kind of just mute this so that we can pull back. So what's going on? Like I said, like Canon's 4K is out of the box absolutely garbage. You can't, if you have autofocus on, you just can't use it. Like it's using what's called contrast focus, which is a really slow focus, but it is a more accurate focus. But it takes, it's not usable. Like when you're trying to focus on things, you're trying to like make things happen very quickly. It's not good. So what I'm doing is I use a tripod to pretty much lock it off. I'm using manual focus, and this isn't just to be for 4K, it's just in general now. I just use manual focus for the vast majority of my shots. And the Clorox, I use focus peaking to nail the focus each time. So you see how like that, I pretty much focused on that door and then pressed record and then walked past it. Same here. I focused on the chair, right? Got the exposure correct and then pressed record and then walked to it. Of course, nothing is pushing in the, when you're doing this is just a big old wide shot, but because it's 4K and it's exported at 1080, you can push in. Here, I focused on the edge of this chair right here, and that's where I was in, because the depth of field is at like f10, f16, something along those lines. Like all this stuff is going to be in focus, and this is the main thing that's going to be in focus. So you're not too worried about it not being out of focus. And if you're using focus peaking, even if you're at f2.8, you can nail it every time. The same thing here. This right here is the Canon 18-200 zoomed in with the 4K crop, but I focus peaked it to where these leaves were, and originally it was this. Hold on, let me pull back. Originally it was this clip, but I used now you actually want to pop up, but I used keyframing to actually do the reverse. So we're playing it, we're cropping into the 4K, and then we're pulling out with it. And the focus, of course, is still the exact same because this isn't me unzooming. This is just the keyframe changing.
All right, that's it. It's over. If you are in need of an e-commerce store, we all need to be able to sell online, especially in these crazy times with the pandemic going on. You can go over to heywillmosley.com to get a quote, and I'll hook you up. We'll make it happen. All right, catch you on the next one. Peace.